All right, thanks everybody. We are now going to have our special guest speaker for this month's meeting. I'm really excited to present to you guys Justin Strekal, who is the political director at National NORML. He's been working for, how many years have you been with NORML now, Justin?
Coming up on the end of my 5th year.
Awesome. He's been working for 5 years, advocating for us at the federal level, working with representatives and other elected officials to craft bills that are in favor of the cannabis industry, really looking out for our rights and trying to end the stigma and criminalization of cannabis. So we're really happy to have you with us here today. Thank you so much.
Really excited to talk about how we have really truly met our moments in the U.S. Congress.
Yeah. So interviewing Justin today is me, Candice Hawes, and we also have Shelly McKay on with us as well. As you guys may know, she's going to be our new incoming Orange County NORML director in January. So we're both going to be asking Justin some questions, informing you guys on the Cannabis Administration and Opportunities Act. So Justin, first of all, can you kind of give us an overview of what this act actually does and how it's similar to the MORE Act?
Well, I will say at this moment, I don't like to refer to it as an act. It is a discussion draft. This bill has not been formally introduced, and we really appreciate the thoughtful approach that Senate Majority Leader Schumer, along with Senators Wyden and Booker, are taking here. What this, and I'll just refer to them as the trio, so I don't have to do all their names every time. What the trio has done here is they took the backbone of the MORE Act that passed in the House of Representatives last December, marking the first time in U.S. history a bill to end federal criminalization and prohibition has ever been considered and passed in a chamber of Congress, that deschedules cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act and contains substantial reinvestment, so that way those who have been harmed by marijuana's criminalization can get expungement relief, as well as opportunities to and pathways to ownership in this emerging marketplace. And then they built upon it what the MORE Act lacked. And in this draft proposal, the trio outlaid their vision for what a post-prohibition regulatory structure should look like in the United States. And we think that they're in this discussion draft, they have a lot of really, really good components, but by reading their own summary, they list out dozens and dozens of questions for which they're seeking stakeholder feedback from. So this is a really terrific opportunity for Orange County NORML, for California NORML, and for national NORML, as well as advocates and interested parties of all stripes to be able to really weigh in and be heard. And I'm really looking forward to getting into what you guys are interested in right now.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me, does this affect like a person's ability to travel? Like if this discussion draft became an act, would this remove like federal penalties on being able to like travel across state lines? Would this like remove drug testing from like some of the workplaces? How would this impact cannabis consumers' lives on like a daily basis?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to talk about that. I'll start with the two you mentioned. First, on just the interstate traveling of a cannabis consumer, it is important to keep in mind we are a representative republic, and marijuana, if we ended federal prohibition today, it would still be just as illegal in 38 states around this country, and all of the localities that still direct law enforcement officers to harass, arrest, and incarcerate otherwise law-abiding citizens. So you can carry your cannabis from California to Arizona without fear of federal law enforcement causing you problems. But I wouldn't drive into Idaho, I'll tell you that. Regarding drug testing, and this is one of the areas that we're particularly frustrated about, is that in the last 11th hour of the MORE Act moving to the floor of the House of Representatives, there was language added that codifies a Reagan-era reefer madness, completely unscientific standard for pre-employment and random drug testing of federal employees. Again, when we think about the nature of government and the private sector, there wouldn't be a mandate for the private sector to, and private businesses to conduct drug testing based as a contingent on employment, but it would maintain the existing oppressive nature of pre-employment and random screening for the feds, And that just sets a really bad example. Especially we're just a couple weeks ago, Amazon, the second largest private employer in the country, substantially revised their internal practices to drop drug testing for cannabis for all of their positions that they're legally allowed to do so, with the exception of the safety sensitive employees, so the drivers, because that's a federal mandate. So that federal mandate would still be in place. We're working really hard with the sponsors' offices to remove that language. All three members of the Senate who are working together have previously introduced legislation that doesn't maintain that kind of oppression. So we're looking for them to go back to that thoughtful nature. And we believe that we can make headway there and improve the draft.
Very good. I think even just changing, the federal law and making this, taking this off the Controlled Substances Act, the job places will no longer, be able to say, well, this is federally illegal, so that's why we have the right to test you, even though you're not a safety sensitive job. Just because you're sitting at the desk, there's no longer that federal classification. So hopefully that will trickle down, and it will be easier for cannabis consumers to, move up, to find new jobs that'll, help support their families better, and to be able to, report workplace injuries, because that's what we hear a lot of. People are really scared to report injuries or to even change jobs because they could possibly face drug tests. So that's definitely one of the biggest things that we deal with here in California. Another thing that we hear a lot about is taxes. So Shelly, I know that you have a question prepared. Do you want to present that?
Oh, sure. So in this draft, they're proposing, as far as tax rates proposed, upon enactment, it would be 10% tax rate. And every year thereafter, it would increase by 5% and cap at 25%. And then it says the after the 25% is reached a threshold at year 5, the secretary will set a rate based on quantity sold or milligram of THC in the case of a product other than flower. So, I, as an operator in the state of California, taxation is a pretty big issue for our consumers. We hear about it every single day. It's not affordable. It has not allowed for safe access for all. They cannot afford legal cannabis. So in California, the legal industry definitely is struggling with overregulation and overtaxation. And as a result, the legacy market continues to thrive. With the proposed tax structure nearly increased to cap at 25%, how is that now affordable for the consumer and operator? So in our city, in Santa Ana, our overall tax rate, this is excise, state, and city, the consumer is paying 31% tax. So, there is full control right now in California. Each state's revenue is theirs because the federal government is not involved. So, I think California NORML has taken the position that, it should remain within the state. And their position is that any new federal regulations and taxes should apply only to cannabis trafficked in interstate commerce, because I know that's part of this draft as well. Federal law should only recognize the legality of cannabis produced, bought, sold, and distributed within the state in legal accordance with local laws. I just wanted to hear more about what your position on this would be. And I know we talked prior to, going on this recording about how 280E and how it affects us as operators, and we can't write off labor costs, that would change definitely, which would be helpful for small businesses. But, it just, to the consumer, how do we even justify that? I just fear that we're going to go further into pushing people back to the legacy market because they can't simply afford it now. So yeah. I just wanted to hear what you had to say about that.
No, it's a really big debate right now happening on Capitol Hill and within the industry and in state by state, municipality by municipality. I mean, tax policy is the fundamental underpinning of all governing philosophies. I will start off by saying, in addition to the top rate of capping out at 25%, as you mentioned, it is important to note this is a 2-tier system that they've proposed, and that top marginal rate will only be applied to the 20 millionth and first dollar that a business generates. And underneath that, there's a refundable tax credit for the first $20 million in receipts that is at half of the rate. So that top rate after 5 years of enactment would only be 12.5% on the first $20 million in revenue. And then the 20 millionth and first and beyond would be 25%. So I want to make sure people are talking about the reality here. And also that, according to our friends over at the National Cannabis Industry Association, as a result of the 280E tax implications, you mentioned that all the tax money is staying in California, but that's actually not the case. Your businesses, you are paying your federal taxes, and you're not able to take, it's not just labor cost deductibility, it's everything along every single aspect of standard deductions. And we've seen, decades and decades and decades of government attempting to influence social cohesion through tax incentives and tax deductions to businesses. So that's, whether it's not you're getting a tax opportunity for hiring a veteran or a disabled individual, or, providing healthcare for your workers. That's a tax write-off that you're not currently able to take as a result of 280E. So NCIA tells us that right now, in the effective tax rate for cannabis companies is 70% at the national level, when every other aspect of the American economy is at 30%. So even with the sticker shock of this initial proposal, you're still going to see the existing cannabis industry paying a net overall lower tax burden than they do under the status quo of federal prohibition and only state legalization. So, is there a real concern for consumers moving forward? Absolutely. But, we do think that, in general, overall, even if we do see the tax provisions as written in this draft, maintain and see their way into law, you are going to see a lower overall tax burden on existing businesses. You're going to create a much more better consumer marketplace that will help allow more companies to get in play, allow cannabis to be distributed across state lines. So that way in dispensaries in California, not only can you have wonderful Californian grown cannabis, but you can also have Oregon grown cannabis and Washington grown cannabis. And that's going to allow your California operators to grow in size, because they can have the ability to access marketplaces around the country. So similarly to how we see, when I go to a wine store in Virginia, there's a section for California wines, there's a section for Oregon and Washington wines, and then there's a section for Virginian wines, and then there's everything else. We should be able to have that kind of a marketplace. And I think that'll overall drive costs down. And I think that due to the fact that, and I'm going to kind of pivot here a little bit for a moment. I think this is really, really important to keep in mind. Right now, everything that we know of as existing as a legal market in 36 states for medical and for 18 states for adult use has been created in this defensive posture. So that way the state can say, no, federal government, we're defying you, but we're doing a really good controlling job. So stay out of our state when it comes to cannabis. Once we end federal prohibition, that will break. That will no longer be the principal organizing philosophy between every single cannabis bill that moves forward. So I do suspect that both industry and consumers alike are going to have a lot more latitude and have a lot more ears opening up to talking about sensible regulations. And, again, the reason why we do these seed to sale tracking programs, the reason why we do, we treat cannabis as if it's plutonium is out of fear of that federal intervention. And that will no longer be the case. And I think you'll be able to improve your municipal laws, your state laws, and we'll continue to be able to work on federal policy.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I'm glad that you brought that up. I completely agree. And you're right, that has been the case. I think it was it the Cole memo that recent that said, if you're doing a really good job of protecting your state cannabis industry, that we will not come in and interfere. So that's a really good point. I never really even thought about that, but that's another benefit that this will bring. And we'll see more states coming on board. I know even here in Orange County, we only have 4 cities out of like 30 something cities that have allowed cannabis regulations and dispensaries and other operators to open. And it's because of the federal law. So with that, with that being possibly, removed in the future, I think more cities would be interested in opening up and allowing dispensaries as well. So you also talked about expungement. Can you talk about what this bill includes with that, like how far that goes back, if that includes just federal crimes, or if that would include like state crimes or anything?
Yeah. Again, just a reminder on this. I wish for expungement this wasn't the case, but we are dealing with a federalist system here. So what this federal bill would do is it would automatically expunge and trigger resentencing for those who have been convicted of federal crimes. But that is an overall overwhelming minority of the number of arrests that have been made. Most arrests are done by municipal or state level law enforcement. So recognizing that, and this is something that we built into the MORE Act last Congress and got passed in the House, is there would be a grant program that would be created to incentivize localities to apply for the money and use that money to cover the costs of facilitating local and state level expungements. Because, right now, and we're seeing California and other states lead the way when it comes to facilitating automatic expungements. I'll shout out, I know Code for America has been a terrific partner for a lot of counties throughout California to build algorithms to go into their systems. So that way they've cleared tens of thousands of records in a single day. We want to see other jurisdictions do that, because too often we see that the folks who still are have the cannabis records on their on their criminal record, it's a result of one of three things. It's either A, they don't have the financial resources to be able to obtain legal counsel to navigate a complicated process. B, they're working class people, they simply don't have the time to be able to go through that process. Or C, they don't have the civic literacy to even know that these programs might be available. So we really, really want to push towards automatic expungement. We want people who have been held back and have had to check those boxes to get a letter that says, we're sorry for having you have this criminal record. It is now gone. You no longer have to check the box.
Wonderful. Are there anything in this draft version that are there any things that are not included that you wish that were included that you guys are going to be working towards?
Yes. So, right now in the last 3 weeks since this proposal has been rolled out publicly, I've already met with 31 different Senate offices, not including the trio, reaching out, talking with both, mostly the majority caucus. I have a few members of the Republican caucus lined up for this week. And then, I'm trying to get, we're getting their input too. I'm going to be talking to 14 different Republican offices, trying to figure out how we can thread this needle moving forward to get a package that's not only something that NORML signs off on, but something that can pass in the United States Senate. And that's a very, very high hurdle. So, trying to be realistic here and operating within, the unfortunate political realities of which we currently live. We are looking at, I mentioned the drug testing policy. We would like to see the tax policy amended to reflect the American value that we do not tax medicine, because as of right now, this bill treats adult use programs and medical programs the same. But that it's a very difficult thing to navigate because, again, each of the 36 medical programs around the country operate in their own unique ways, and trying to find a uniform federal tax application for that to figure out where the deductibility is, where it is incredibly difficult. So we're working with the sponsoring offices to explore possibilities there. There is a provision in the tax section acknowledging the right for lawful home cultivation, but we'd like to see those aspects get strengthened. There's a few other things here and there. No bill is perfect, period. If we're looking at a perfect bill, we're looking at a bill that has absolutely no chance to get passed. But that being said, I think overall this vision, it's all things considered, it's going in the right direction. And we really look forward and appreciate the sponsoring offices, being so receptive over the years to NORML's feedback. We look forward to continuing that going forward. And appreciate the fact that we're only in this position because of champions coming out of California like Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Tom McClintock, and so many others. Lou Correa in Orange County. Shout out Lou Correa. He is, I've worked closely with him in his office to develop a number of provisions, specific. He likes to focus specifically on veterans because OC and I know, Riverside County has one of the largest veterans populations by density in the country. There's a lot of good work, and in no small part, Congress is following California's lead.
Yeah. And actually, I love that you pointed out Lou Correa. In the beginning of his career, he was not a friend of cannabis. And he actually tried to introduce several cannabis DUI bills. And it wasn't until he got continuing education from the industry and from stakeholders in Orange County that he completely pivoted and he became like a hero of ours. So it just kind of shows that even these guys that, at first, kind of the first couple times that you have interactions with them, if they're against cannabis, just keep working on them, find the issues that they're interested in, which are veterans, and, educate them on how this issue relates to that. And now we've completely won him over, which is amazing. He's a big friend of ours. Shelly, did you have any questions that you want to ask? And then I have two final questions.
I just wanted to, we were talking about like the medical patient, right? And, that's obviously a very, very, it's huge. It's near and dear to me because, I've worked with so many patients over the past few years. And, I just want to know, like, there's protections for these medical patients, like you had said, there's certain amount of programs that are being run in different states, but there are, like, as we know right now, there are so many medical cannabis refugees, right, that can't cross state line with medicine or to get medicine. And, like there's a lot of pediatric patients out there that are taking it for epilepsy, there's doctors that are prescribing it for certain cancers, autism. There's so many things that these pediatric patients are using cannabinoids for. And so, I guess my concern would be that, there's, of course, the minimum age that they're saying is 21 and over to purchase, but there was nothing really mentioned about the minor cannabis patient that really, really relies on it as their medicine. And also, yeah, the overtaxation on medicine, that is such a concern for me, that we protect the patient and we allow for something like that within this draft. I mean, that'll be part of my comments for sure. And by the way, I think we should probably put in the chat, the deadline to make comments would be what, September 1st?
Yes, September 1st.
Yeah, and then we'll put the email address up, or the email address up for that. But anyway, just getting back to, just making it a compassionate, safe access for all, and how do we protect the patient? It wasn't really mentioned. And I know there's a lot going on with the separation of hemp versus cannabis versus CBD, and is it a supplement per the FDA? I mean, there's a lot going around like that, but in the end, we need to protect the patient.
I will say, not just patient, but all consumer protections. And that's why, one of the great things is, that I haven't had to bring up is this proposal has statutory protections for all, to prevent the denial of any public benefit for a consumer of cannabis, regardless of reason. It has protections for, and it has protections for immigrants, because right now, California has a lot of immigrants in this country, in their borders. If you are going through the legal process, crossing all your T's, dotting all your I's, but then you have a cannabis related infraction, that can prevent your naturalization. It has protections for them. It has protections for, right now, when I say public benefits, I want to go back to that for a second. Like this is huge, right? As of right now, if you live in any form of receiving any support for housing, if you're in possession of marijuana within the domicile, regardless of whether or not it's even yours, let's just say you have a bag in your pocket, you go to your friend's house, yada yada yada, whatever happens, that cannabis is discovered within that house, they will be evicted. They will no longer. So it's about protecting both consumers and the people that love them. And a lot of those aspects are in this bill. But when we're talking about the federal level, and this is why I'm happy to join your guys' local meeting, is that the feds can only do so much under our representative Republican style federalist system, right? And so much of the policy that is really going to impact you day to day is done at the local level, it's done at the state level. Because while for example, under the federal proposal here, there is a legal possession limit of 10 pounds, right? Whether or not you should, whether or not we ideologically think that there should be a legal possession limit in general, what, if we do agree with that there should be, what should that be set at is really irrelevant, because ATF or DEA agents are not going to go door to door at, knocking on the door saying, excuse me, how much marijuana do you have in the house? We'd like to put it on this scale. That's going to be your local law enforcement. That's going to have to do with, your state level distribution limits, like how much you can purchase at the dispensary. Like it's there where a lot of this rubber meets the road. At the federal level, principally, we're trying to just end the prohibition so that way we can allow these state level legal experiments to operate as intended, with full access to the rest of the American economy, be it through banking, be it through fair tax treatment, be it through the ability to access other legal markets within the union, and giving the states the freedom to do so. Because I've had a lot of NORML supporters and marijuana activists reach out to me and express their profound frustration or scream at me that somehow this bill isn't going to legalize marijuana in their state. That's why I never say federal legalization. I only ever say ending federal prohibition, ending federal criminalization, because even if this package was signed into law today, marijuana possession would still be just as illegal in 38 states around this country. 14 of or 10 of which have technically decriminalized, but it's still an impetus for law enforcement to enter into an interaction with a citizen, still issue a public citation, still, some of those states that we consider decriminalization, it's still a criminal record. You just don't go to jail. None of that will change. And when I look at this from the federal level, I don't want my words to lead somebody to conduct themselves in a way that could put them in harm's way of state violence because they misunderstood what we were trying to say as advocates.
Wow. There's a lot in this bill, and I'm so thankful that you were able to share all this with us, and hopefully everybody can take this and digest it and look through the report that Shelly showed that they have out there, give feedback. Now, you said that this is just a discussion draft. What do you think the chances are of this, moving forward this year? Do you think this is something more that will be something that possibly gets before everybody next year? What is the pathway, and what are the chances of it actually passing?
Well, I will start by saying I have given up on assuming I can predict the future, right? We were, looking back, past this prologue in a lot of ways, and at the beginning of 2019, when we were working with Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler's office, as well as then Senator, now Vice President Kamala Harris's office, on drafting the MORE Act as when it was first introduced, everybody told us that there was no way in hell it would get passed. Mm-hmm. And we saw a pathway, we worked diligently, and then a global pandemic struck. And it destroyed all of our plans, but we kept our head down, we kept working real hard, we kept on speaking up, and we were able to make history last December in getting that bill passed. Everybody from the prohibitionists to the marijuana industry said that bill had no chance. And it was advocates, it was NORML, it was the Drug Policy Alliance, it was Students for Sensible Drug Policy, it was the Marijuana Justice Coalition, and that got it done. So, to quote the philosopher warrior Jyn Erso from Star Wars, rebellions are built on hope, and I do truly believe there are pathways for this to end prohibition in this Congress, but it's a very narrow pathway, and we need to expand that window. That's why we're going through this discussion period. That's why, you're able, in California right now, your senior senator opposes this kind of reform. Senator Feinstein, for as much of a leader as she is on so many good issues, on this issue, her intransigence is archaic, it is oppressive, and it is unrepresentative of the great state that she has been elected to represent, continue to represent. So, whatever you guys can do in California to push Senator Feinstein, it is very hard to see a pathway to 60 votes in the US Senate because of the nature of the filibuster without unity amongst the 50 Democratic members, and that means Senator Feinstein. So, whatever you can do, if, you have a lot of Republicans who are kind of curious now out of, in the House of Representatives coming from California, more and more so. Your state, you have the Republican House Minority Leader with Kevin McCarthy, who in the past has said absurd things about cannabis, but he has voted for the Safe Banking Act. So, there's a window there. Whether or not he's more on the side of the bankers than the consumers, that's a whole different question. But, you can use that as a positive entry point to have that dialogue. There's a whole lot to do, but I as far as, they're taking public comments through September 1st. I don't know how long of a process it's going to be for between September 1st when they say, okay, no more comments, we need to look at these. And then they go through the comments, they go work with the other members of the Senate. And, I firmly believe that the trio is trying to thread the needle. What can we do to get to 60? And I know that's going to mean I know that they're willing to entertain a lot of the changes that we're asking for, that we think will improve the package. I know that they're willing to make changes that we wouldn't necessarily like, but I do believe, with the long time leadership that Cory Booker and Ron Wyden have displayed on this issue and been our allies for decades now. And now with the chutzpah and tenacity of Senate Majority Leader Schumer, who really, used to be another prohibitionist. He used to support criminalization, but it was through the work of New York activists who had those conversations with him, and he got to see the harm firsthand. He got to hear about the absurdity firsthand, and that's what made him a true believer in reform. We still have a lot more shoe leather to put in.
Wow. And so there's action alerts that people can go to the National NORML website right now, right? And they can easily send out letters to representatives in California or for people watching in different states. Definitely participate in those. It takes just a couple seconds and they mean so much to our efforts, right?
Yes, no, absolutely. Right now, if you go and I'll make sure that you guys have them so you can share them with the membership. We have our own internal comment piece so if you want to share with the NORML team what you think we should be fighting for and against in this package, let us know. I've read over 5,000 comments. It has been like injecting NORML's viewpoints into my bloodstream. And a lot of really thoughtful ones have been made. So particularly if you're just going to comment and say, hey, legalize it, that's not going to help me inform writing our comments. But if you have serious perspectives, please let us know. And then we additionally have an alert where you can contact Senators Feinstein and Padilla and tell them now is the time to get engaged in this conversation. If you want to see, if there are aspects of this policy reform that you want to see change that would make them comfortable in supporting it, that may not otherwise be there already, now is the time, because we do not want to see this bill get introduced and then Senator Feinstein get asked about it and her to say, I don't support it.
Yeah.
That would be hard. That would mean, that is not, I'm not going to say it sets us back, but it prevents us from taking another step forward. And it's really, really unfortunate, the intransigence of a legal state Democrat. We're coming up on the 25th anniversary of 215, right? That she still is unwilling to engage in federal reforms to protect the medical patients, let alone the adult use program. So there's still a lot to do in California and around the country.
Yeah, I send her letters all the time, and yeah, it's like cookie cutter response, the same thing. I'm hoping one of these days it'll change and there'll be some sort of sliver of light in there. But I completely agree. And what you said earlier, to the point that even some of the prohibitionists still vote in favor of cannabis policies, and that there are ways that we can find that we're aligned in the same way. There was a bill in California that passed a couple years ago, Ryan's Law, and it passed unanimously. So even our most conservative Republicans agreed that people dying of terminal conditions in the hospital should have access to cannabis. So there are always things that we can find commonality with, and then that's like a doorway to open bigger conversations and to have them support us. So I'm so thankful that we have you at National Normal. You are amazing. I love listening to your perspective on the federal government. You're very informative and very entertaining at the same time. You're very truthful. And I'm just so thankful that you took this time during your lunch today to record this presentation for us so we can help share your information with our chapter members.
No worries. No, thank you. You know, I always say the only reason why I'm able to do what I do is because of the hard work and you know, and sometimes dangerous position activists have put themselves in over the last 50 years carrying the NORML banner. And I'm just trying to make sure that I'm bringing that tenacity and legitimacy to the halls of Congress. So thank you guys for all you do. For all of you watching, contact your senators, contact Senator Feinstein, call our office. You know, use our action alerts. If you got substantive thoughts for me, you want to inform me, I'm still processing our own formal comments and requests. So you can let us know, talk with Shelly, talk with Kandice, you know, Orange County NORML. If you guys want to send your own letter to Senator Feinstein, you know, send your own things, just like, you know, Dale and Ellen have been working on for California NORML writ large. I think that's a great opportunity for you. But yeah, no, keep the faith and keep fighting.
Thank you.
Thank
Cool.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Shelly. Thank you, Justin. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great day.
you. Bye.
Bye.